most notorious or most popular witches and wizards. That's what a lot of Nigerians think bats are. They think that they don't understand why are they even in existence? Why did God make bats? What use are bats, to humanity? So today I have someone, Benef Obite. He's the director of conservation program of Small Mammals Conservation Organization. Thank you very much for joining me. Um,
Thank you so much, Ugochi. Thank you for
very
having
nice.
me.
Okay, okay. So let's first talk. Respond to people who say bats are witches and wizards. Why did God make bats? They are so ugly. They're useless. What would you say to them?
Interestingly, my recent research trip to somewhere in Edo State, some people said bats were cursed by God, and because they were cursed, God they do everything with their mouth, give birth, and as well as eat and also pass feces through their mouth. But all those are not correct. Yeah, the problem of witches has been there for a very long time, and perhaps it's not their fault because birds are not very easy to understand. I mean, they fly, but they are not birds. They are unique in a way, so we fear what we do not understand. And of course, they move at night. They are nocturnal. So, but our major conservation program has been focused on trying to re-educate people about bats. This idea of being witches, the movie industries have not also helped matters. In horror movies, when they want to show very horror scenes, you usually see
Demons. Yeah.
bats flying out. So um, we are focusing on that, and the best way we are doing that is trying to talk up more about the importance of bats. Why, how important they are in the ecosystem. They are important pollinators, and
We'll
perhaps
talk about their importance, but let's focus also on you know what people wonder, why do they look like this, why are they made like this? Tell us more about their biological composition.
well, they are evolutionarily adapted to inhabit the night, if you like, and they are very successful because they are nocturnal. There are not a whole lot of organisms moving around in the night, so that gives them that um, empty niche, if you like. But there's nothing like empty niche. But competition is lowest at night for what they do, and most of them feed on insects, just moving around, flying around, catching insects at night, and some others feed on fruits. So the night is a perhaps a perfect time for them to be very successful. And yeah, that's why they have been perhaps the second most successful mammal.
So they're not blind. People say they're blind. I know they're not blind. They're not blind.
No, they are not blind. In fact, the very cute fruit bats, some of them have dog faces, several kinds of faces, and they have very big eyes. They actually use their eyes, but highly developed to see in the dark. But the insectivorous bats, most of them use echolocation, and that's emitting as they are flying or they are moving around. They emit sound, high frequency sounds that we cannot hear, and they receive, how when you shout in an empty room, you hear an echo. So it's like the mechanism of an echo. So they move around, emit all those sounds, and receive them back to, and then analyze the sound, this received sound, to be able to analyze whatever object is reflecting those sounds. So this is echolocation. They use echolocation to move um, at night, so they don't rely a lot on their eyes for insectivorous bats.
And then
But
let's talk about a bit about
they
okay.
are not blind.
I know that growing up, I would remember seeing bats in the evening. They fly out and they're thousands of them at night. What's your first experience, working with bats as a young person before your education?
Um, my most vivid experience was I and my dad when we went to the village a long time ago, and we had um, tiny insectivorous bats in our roof, and that was becoming a problem because the the guano, that's the feces, were on a lot on the one of the rooms, the ceiling, and the ceiling was caving in. So we had to. My dad got this mixture of chemicals, and we went into the roof to try to fumigate and try to chase them out. We succeeded, but it was just for a while. That was my most vivid experience before I discovered bats.
But then they were scary for you too as a young person, because I also had that experience. These things, they could easily invade homes then, and then they would take over the roofs. A lot of people had it, in their neighborhoods, and everyone hated them.
Yeah, yeah. And the idea also that there's always one sinister story or the other going on with bats, and you hear people saying, thanking God that a bat flew into their house at night and they were able to kill it. So that was a testimony for a lot of people. So that idea festered. But um, then after my first degree, my degree in zoology, I got to, that was the first time I started learning, bats as biological entities, as animals, just ordinary animals, before I then got deeply involved with them.
Okay, before I continue, I would like to quickly say hello to those who have joined us. Lots of people have joined in. We have Mark, we have Pablo. Thank you so much. Thank you, the authentic lean gift Omosaka. Thank you. Thank you, one day Adalemo. And he said they use sonar to navigate. And thank you very much, Brett Walker, for joining an eco-location, which dolphins also use that as well. Dolphins use that. Okay, so very interesting. Thank you very much. So let's talk about how useful are they? I know they help in pollination. What use are they to humanity, to the planet?
Yeah. They since you started with pollination, they are important pollinators of several plants, and some of them very economically important. I will give you one local example. Dawa in Nigeria, the Iru thin important spice for soup, is pollinated by bats, mainly pollinated by bats. So this is just one tiny example. They spend a lot of time in the night, and because they are very mobile, it means they can visit several of these trees in one night, pollinating them. And then seed dispersal, we try to call them tree forest planters, because birds can move hundreds of kilometers at night. And why they are different from every other seed disperser, like the other mammals and even birds, is they do not destroy the seeds of whatever they eat. So it's like they just take the fruit into their mouth and try to chew them a bit and suck out the juice. And they do that while they are flying. And whenever they finish, they just drop it off wherever they are at that moment. Sometimes they can swallow both the seeds and then travel hundreds of kilometers um, to pass those out. So this makes them perhaps the most effective seed disperser.
Someone also mentioned that they are important for the population control for insects. I learned they can eat, they can consume so much insects, almost their body weight in just one
Right.
night.
Right. I live in I currently live in Texas, and bats save Texas farmers millions of dollars every year in control of pests. So it's very, very important in terms of pest control. And this is not just for farmers, also mosquitoes, they consume a lot of mosquitoes. So they are also control for some diseases.
Hmm. Or maybe perhaps not Nigeria because we still have, malaria still widespread in Nigeria. Maybe they're not controlling those particular ones, species of mosquitoes that it cause malaria. Now let's talk about how endangered they are. We have about 181 species of bats that are endangered across the world. Some are critically endangered, some are very vulnerable. Tell us about why they are endangered. Why? What's happening to them?
Well, the major problem is just habitat degradation and habitat loss. Um, the bats are losing their habitats, of course, through deforestation, logging. In Nigeria, for example, where I work, it's more um, habitat destruction, farming, and also, of course, fragmentation and logging as well, because I work in Cross River from southeast to southwest, and we're having serious logging problems and farming, smallholder farms. This is just one of the problems. But another major problem is also hunting. In Nigeria, Africa, Southeast Asia, in Oceania, bats are intensely hunted for meat, for ornaments. In some countries in the Oceania, they use the teeth for some kind of necklace, and also they are harvested in some parts for oil, for their oil. So hunting is also very a big problem. In fact, currently we have 8 extinct bats. About five of those are fruit bats, and three of those were hunted to extinction. So hunting is also a major problem. In Nigeria, where I work currently, my research is about trying to understand how hunting affects them across the landscape, and also why people studying human behavior to identify the major behavioral drivers of both bat hunting and bat meat consumption.
And later we'll talk about if they are disease vectors and if they've contributed to coronavirus, to COVID, across the world. But I'll ask you about your work in communities in Nigeria. How difficult is it to help people or make them understand that bats are actually important in these communities? Apart from those who eat them, how about those who just kill them just for the sake of killing them?
Yeah, for people, it's not too difficult, in my opinion, because Nigerians are one of the most welcoming people. It's easy to just walk into a community you've never been before, and in a few hours, um, you are very comfortable with people. So that part is not a problem. But and also the people who just kill them because they are bats, that is just that is also not a conservation problem in my own opinion, because that's just very minute. It's infinitesimal. How many people even get to see bats in their houses to get to kill them? But the problem is the people who harvest them for meat. In Cross River, in Boki, there are places where bats are harvested up to 4,000 individuals in one single hunting effort, because these are cave roosting bats. They live in caves, so you can easily cover the cave entrances and agitate the bats, and they flock into the nets, and they are clubbed to death. So,
and then fried and eaten.
yeah, well, cooked or fried, yeah, in different ways, or smoked and eaten. So that's the main problem. But trying to convince people not to do that is the major problem. um, because a lot of things, there are a lot of drivers for why they do that. So what we are trying to do is to, there are in different stages. The first stage is to try to convince people that bats are important, and we use local examples. We're doing lots of ecosystem services research in each local community to understand what the bats are contributing to each community. So this is like a locality specific research, not just coming to tell people, okay, bats are important. They pollinate plants. You need to tell them what plants are they pollinating in their environment. What plants is this plant important to them? So when you have that information, they are more likely to buy into the idea of, okay, bats are important. Now that's the first stage. And the second stage is to convince them to stop eating bats, which is the more difficult one. And we have lots of data right now. We are analyzing to try to understand what behavioral drivers are making people, do what. Because one of the major mistakes conservationists make is just to think that every conservation problem is linked to money, is linked to poverty. Sometimes people eat meat because they are tasty. So if you provide them an alternative, say fish or beef, it won't solve the problem, because what the major driver is the taste. So you have to deal with taste. You have to deal with drivers,
But
specific
how do
drivers
you
in
deal with
different places.
someone's taste buds?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
super
yeah. So
difficult.
great. So the our technique, well, technique, our solutions come with it, they're like a community participatory approach. All right, you have to talk with community. Well, it's more about research and discussion and what alternatives could be out there. One good alternative is the cane rat, what they call grass cutter or cane rat. Generally in Nigeria is grass cutter. um, Grass cutter is a very tasty bushmeat.
Not bushmeat. Not oh, okay. Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's very
because I
tasty.
know because
It's
I
a
know
wild meat.
bushmeat. Some bushmeats are endangered already.
Yeah, now good. That's the point. The point is they are domesticated. There are grass cutter farms now all over Africa. All right. So if you can key into that, and instead of harvesting grass cutters in the wild, you can go to farms in Port Harcourt or some other cities um, and buy lots of them and breed across the communities and work with community people to try to subsidize the cost. So lots of people, in fact, some communities are already clamoring for that, because this is not our idea. This is their idea, and this is an already existing mechanism in some other places. So why not buy into that? But I'm not saying this is a panacea. I'm not saying this is the solution to every problem, but I'm just trying to say that conservation plans should target specific drivers of behavior for them to be effective.
And they must be very locally driven or locally initiated.
Of course, because if you bring something that works in Kenya, it may not work here, because it may not work in Nigeria, because these are two separate places. And if you bring also something that works in Western Nigeria, it might also not work in the East, because these are also different people. So yeah, it has to be, like you said, communities specific.
And also, can we talk more about why they are endangered? Bats do not procreate very quickly or very easily. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, you're perfectly correct. They are case selected species. The mistake a lot of people make also is they think bats are like rodents that can have several reproductive pulses in a year, and each time they can litter about, say, 10 or more of the, but most bats actually have one reproductive pulse in a year, and they give birth to just one pup.
So
Some
can you
can,
say that again? So that, because when we see them in their thousands, we think that, I mean, they just, it's so quick for them. So just one in 1 year.
just one in a year, and some go as much as two. The most hunted bat in southeast Nigeria is the Egyptian fruit bat, because it's a fruit bat, but it's the only fruit bats that live in caves, so it's easier for them to hunt it. That bat has 1 to 2 reproductive pauses in a year, and that means a very healthy female can have at most two pups in a year. So assuming it's in its best, it's very fertile, it's in its best shape, the most it can give birth to in a year is just two. And imagine when you're hunting them, you're taking thousands at a time. How do they recover?
Someone asked the question, so do we see them in big swamps because they live a long time?
Yeah. Another good thing too is they live a long time. Some bats can live up to more than 30 years. All right, so they live a long time, which is a good thing, for us. But also the problem of being a K-selected species, not being able to, not having lots of reproductive pulses, it's also a major problem.
Okay, someone also said many ages within the. Thank you very much, MDo123, for your comments. And so now to diseases. Coronavirus further demonized bats. We saw those horrible and ugly pictures. Horrible and ugly to some people. Where we see bats in pots and plates and people eating them even raw. So bats and diseases. Help us make a connection. COVID, Ebola. What's the connection?
Well, bats have developed evolutionarily, they have developed tolerance for viruses. All right, they can harbor lots of viruses and not be harmed by it. So this makes them an important host or reservoir for some of these viruses. Marburg and some other viruses that have not spilled over, or that do not have spillover potentials to humans. For COVID-19, the science is not clear yet.
Absolutely not clear.
Yeah, it's not clear, but the idea of bats, because several viruses have been isolated from bats in the past, so bats are soft targets. Every single time you have a new virus, and because a similar virus to SARS-CoV-2 was recently isolated from a bat in China. So whoa, everybody said, okay, this is where SARS-CoV-2 came from. But science is not clear yet about the origin of the SARS-CoV-2. That's the virus responsible for coronavirus. But there is a link. There might be a link because, of course, the virus I talked about is structurally similar to SARS-CoV-2, but functionally different. So they are hypothesizing that it could be that it needed another host to hybridize to be able to jump over to humans. But these are all hypotheses. But I'm sure it will be very clear.
But for Ebola?
Well, for Ebola, it wasn't as if the Ebola virus was isolated live from bats, but antibodies. So we know that bats also can have Ebola. They could be reservoir for Ebola, but there's no evidence whatsoever that it jumped to humans, because it's the same antibodies. Antibodies means these bats have been infected by Ebola in the past and it survived, right? So, but there is also no evidence that we got Ebola from bats.
Okay, you before we went live, you mentioned that you studied at the University of Nigeria in Soka. And have you been to Ogbunike Cave? Because I see pictures of bats.
No, no, I haven't. But I have seen pictures as well. I've seen videos as well from Ogbunike Cave. But I have been to all sorts of cave, further east, Cross River, and also in Edo State. Yeah, but not been to Ogbunike Cave yet.
For those who do not know, Ogbunike Cave is quite popular. Is a tourist site. It's located in southeastern Nigeria. And then talking about Benin and bats and witches, and then they say in Benin they fly, during the day. They're so vicious that they're so, vile, and they fly during the day.
Yeah, so the bats in Benin, the straw-colored fruit bats, I don't have them. They are perhaps the most widespread fruit bats in Africa. They roost, and so they live in just trees, hanging on trees, and they are able, when disturbed in the afternoon, they can easily switch from one tree to the other. So, that's why people think you don't see them foraging. What I mean, you don't see them feeding in the afternoon. It's not their time. If they are moving around in the afternoon, it's probably they were disturbed in their tree, in their roost, or maybe it got uncomfortable for them. Well, it's still disturbance. Maybe it got too hot.
So not because someone is praying.
No, not because someone is praying. And the good thing too, in Benin, we've been monitoring the population in Benin for more than 10 years now. No, about 10 years now. And the good thing in Benin is, because of the superstition, some people call them the Obas bats. Means it belongs to the palace. It has something to do with spiritual standing of the Edo people. So some people still respect them in that aspect. So that's also a good thing for us.
Also, do they kill them?
Yes, but they do. Very few people come to hunt them occasionally, but very, very few people.
Okay. And then before I let you go, we have about 2 minutes to go. A Nigerian, Iroro Tansi, recently won the prestigious Future for Nature Awards 2020. You heard about that? How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel that a lot of young people, are getting into conservation and of bats? Conservation of bats. That's it wasn't very popular.
Okay, so Iroro is my wife.
Oh, so, I didn't know that. Congrats. Really? You both work on bats?
Yes. So we got married this year, during the pandemic, in the heart of the pandemic. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my first bat research
Is she there? Is she there?
Yeah, she's in the room.
Can we see her? Can we see the award winner?
Iroro,
this is beautiful.
Do you want to show your face? She will be here in a minute. She's coming.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so my first research trip on bats was with Iroro. That was the first time, well, not the first time I met her, but because during my master's, she just returned from the UK from a master's and came to finish another master's she started in University of Benin. So that's when we met. That's when we
Okay.
met. And she had this funding and needed somebody to go to the field with her. Okay, so why not? I just finished my
So you
research
went
and
back
then
scouting and then you fell in love with that. That's a
I
really
fell
an
in love.
interesting story.
Yeah, I
Love
fell in love with
conservation.
bats. And then a few years, I fell in love with bats, and then a few years from then, I fell in love with her.
Nice.
Ne. All right,
I need to
she's
be I need to check. I need to go behind you. Go over because you
okay.
makeup, you know. On the makeup,
All right.
yeah. Then we talk about, how does it make you feel that young people are really interested in conservation?
Yeah, I mean it's very fantastic. Because it used to be conservation is it used to be championed by it used to be a foreign idea, what we see on nature channels, but the idea that Nigerians are getting more into it, and we also have a program where we train young people, where we mentor young people. It's not just training them, we train them and then connect them to experts across the world who co-supervise their projects and teach them how to look for funding. And what um, what I'm most happy about is whenever I take young students to the field, undergraduate students to the field, and we spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks in the forest, the amazement in their eyes that what they see in TVs could be actually happening in Nigeria. And they see all these huge equipment set up,
Absolutely.
different kinds of, and they see real science happening in their backyard. So it makes them more interested. And I'm sure in a very few years from now, we're going to have a critical mass where we have several lots of young people flooding the system and raising others. And I also say that some already existing NGOs in Nigeria are also helping in their own way to build capacity. People like WCS, the Wildlife Conservation Society, Pandrilus, they are also helping in their own way to build capacity. So I think it's an integrated solution. Lots of people are coming in to do this. Okay,
Absolutely. And,
so
and
she's here.
we're here
Carrying on.
communicating. Hey,
Oh,
nice. This has to be my best interview ever. Oh my God, surprise, surprise. Good to see you.
Hi.
And congratulations.
Thank you so much. I don't think we've met before, but this is very nice.
No, 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 no. I was actually saying I think I should interview her,
Oh my
before. And then I said, oh, I was surprised when he said this. Oh my God, your hair is beautiful, by the way. Your hair
Thank
is
you.
very
I
beautiful.
look like the coronavirus, don't I?
No, 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 no. No, so let's talk about the award. How did you feel when you heard you won this prestigious award?
Oh my God.
Bennett,
So this was the second go round.
Thank you. We're done with you.
So,
Thank you.
so this was the second go around, and I guess my heart stopped for a second, like when you get that email, it's like, oh my God, it happened, you know.
I know how it
So
feels.
that was definitely quite the thrill. And I guess sometimes it doesn't really dawn on you. You're happy, you start telling people, I got this award, but please be quiet, don't say anything about it until it's announced online. But I think it was the ceremony that really brought it home, because it was quite an enchanting evening, because they did this thing where they got my parents to also record a message. And that was like, oh my God, you guys are, so some of us started bawling and just crying, I guess. But yeah, I don't think that
Yeah,
feeling leaves you, it's quite,
yeah.
it's quite
profound.
nice. Yeah.
It means
To,
all that work you do is recognized and someone is really watching and seeing what you do. We can't see your face clearly
exactly.
anymore. Yeah. So so
Okay.
so so what got you interested in bats? When and how did you start?
Oh, okay. So, well, I got into bats after hearing a lecture at during the field course in Uganda, 2010. And at least at the time, I was shopping for a master's project. You know, I've always wanted to do something exciting, but the opportunity, options available at the time at University of Benin weren't very exciting. So I saw a bat during that field workshop, but I also listened to a lecture where someone was describing some really exciting research in Cote d'Ivoire. Like they were talking about a PhD student who would climb up into the forest canopy and watch bats all night, collect flower scents. That was just mind blowing. You know, it's like
Very
the kind of things
fascinating.
you see exactly on National Geographic channel. It's like, oh my God, this happens in my backyard. This is exciting. I want to do this. Like suddenly, I was back in Benin, and I immediately went to visit that the bat roost you were just talking about at Ring Road. That's kind of where it started from.
Ring Road, popular Ring Road, popular Ring Road in Benin. So
Yes.
when you started, did anybody tell you why would you think about working with bats, especially from where you come from, or Benin and bats? Did anybody
Oh
try to
my God.
discourage you?
Yeah, people said all sorts of things. Like everybody from, the ice cream guy on the streets to the woman selling plantain on the corner to even professors and bankers, like everybody was across board. It was almost like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, these are witches. You definitely shouldn't be looking at bats. And sometimes it depends on who the person is. I would either chuckle and laugh it off, or I would start to explain. But I didn't take the people on the streets for granted, because I think he mentioned, I don't know if he mentioned Eidolon monitoring. So when we're on the streets in Benin counting bats, because when we monitor them monthly, what we do is we count them. I don't take for granted the encounters I get then. So anybody that asks questions at the time, I'm always like, take my time and explain it to them and say, this is why we're doing this. So there was definitely a position. In fact, my parents too. My parents they were quite interested. Most Nigerian parents expect their kids to either, end up with an oil company position. So when I told them I'll be spending time in the forest, oh my God, they were quite unimpressed. It was like, what are you doing with your life? You're just wasting opportunity, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, there was an opposition, and there still is some, but for the most part, my parents are good. They found a man who loves bats as much as I do.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then when they heard that you found love while searching for bats, I mean, it would have been like, oh, thank you for looking out for those bats.
Exactly. They were like, it's totally worth it now. So, Nigerian parents want their kids to get married and whatnot. So, yeah, it's
So,
been a journey, I guess.
such a beautiful story. Someone asked, Brett Walker asked, so when is this Bat Love Story movie coming out? I have to be part of this this movie. So you guys planned this.
Oh, that's lovely.
Oh,
What next?
wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're so proud of you as Nigerians, as Africans. Keep making us proud and keep loving each other and the bats, forever and ever. Thank you so much, Bennett. I mean, this is such an interesting interview for me. I appreciate, and thank you for mentioning that, you didn't omit that part and say, oh, it's a personal story. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, and I wish you the best as you work to save bats across Nigeria, across Africa, and across the world. Best wishes to you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to everyone who joined in. We appreciate your time. Have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. I am Ugochi Olivo. Bye-bye.